Hello Void! For today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit more about my experiences with working through Rod and Ring, an initiation into a Mesopotamian mystery tradition. I recently finished the last portion of the descent section of Rod and Ring. This part took about 6 months, with 3 rituals, each taking place 3 months apart. At least as written in the book, the different parts were meant to be performed 3 months apart, though other people who have gone through this initiation have interpreted it to mean 3 months total for all of the descent rituals. I chose to keep mine as planned, spanning 6 months, however, for personal reasons. I don't remember if I've talked about this already on YouTube yet, or just in Facebook posts and my blog, but I ended up starting the descent in January and I finished in July. This was the same time frame that I spent in treatment for my breast cancer a couple years ago. So mirroring that very much unwanted descent experience with this series of rituals about getting to know and understand the powers of Kur was very healing and therapeutic for me. For each part of this initiation, the supplicant is instructed to create a special ritual garment. For descent, it is a black garment meant to represent a burial shroud. When I made my black garment, I felt like I should also make a veil to go alongside it. Then, throughout the time I was working through descent, I also wore a little headscarf as a representation of currently being in the underworld. This was not part of the requirements for this initiation. It was just something that I thought would add to the experience for me personally. So I started the descent right after coming home from a mini vacation to Kalahari because my husband got us a free room there for some work conference he was doing. I used this as an opportunity to reflect on the upcoming ritual journey and to connect with the gods. For example, in the lazy river, I kind of meditated on the idea of traveling across the river Hubur towards the underworld. And I paid special attention to the sensory experiences of going down the river, so I could use that when I did it ritually. I did similar meditation exercises while in the wave pool and especially in the hot tub. Rather than fasting in a more traditional way, I used this as an opportunity to kind of disengage from real life responsibilities and focus more on the spiritual in the week leading up to the ritual. I also ended up going on a real vacation just before the third part of the descent, the House of Dust, so I did the same thing then too. Part 1. The first ritual in descent takes the initiate across the river Hubur to the gates of the underworld. You are guided by Enkidu from Mesopotamian mythology. The descent ritual was a very intense and emotional experience. I could literally feel my body trembling as I put on my black garment, and again when I ritually crossed the river, which I represented with a little tray of water on the floor. When I say I was trembling, I don't mean from fear. It was more like excitement and awe. You would think that this type of ritual would be scary since I was working with the powers associated with death and the underworld, but it wasn't at all. I was overcome with a profound sense of peace, awe, and love, which I also experienced throughout the later rituals. One of the most significant parts of this ritual was giving up the gifts of the gods that I received in the previous rituals in the foundation section. I reflected on each of the 7 gifts, and then wrote a statement for each on a slip of paper and burnt them. This served as a reminder that everything in life is temporary. Eventually you have to give it all up. Some of my notes from my journal from when I did the descent rituals. I did the first part of the descent last night. It was intense and amazing and fun. I don't know if it's appropriate to refer to a religious experience as fun, but it was. I was physically shaking during parts of the rituals. It felt like something very significant was happening as I put on my black garment and veil, my burial shroud. I think I want that to be my ghost outfit. It was such a powerful and emotional experience. I can't even fully describe it in words. But at the same time, I also felt completely at peace. It was so weird and nice. There's parts here I don't really want to say out loud, so I'm just looking for what I want to say. I've already mentioned some of these parts. I'm going to skip it. I keep my altar set up the same way I do for my normal practice when I do these rituals. Just add the required things that I need for the rituals. And after I crossed over the river Hubur, Inanna's candle went out on my altar, or so I thought. When I looked closer, it was still burning, but it was very dim. But there was still some light. I took this to mean that Inanna is still here with me, but ultimately this was something I have to do by myself. What I was most struck by was that the underworld is not a scary place. I just got a sense of peace and love. And then here's an entry for a journeying meditation I did the following night. I remember realizing that I belong as much to Ereshkigal as I do to Inanna, and that turning away from Ereshkigal won't do any good. But she is so loving and compassionate, and people only fear her because of their own fear of the unknown and death. Through the netting of the veil, I could still see Inanna's candle burning. I could still see her statue, and I knew that no matter how far into the Kur I descend, I will always have my connection to her. Ereshkigal cannot take me away from Inanna. She can only offer me additional love. She isn't there to punish me, but to help me on my own spiritual evolution. And then I go on to talk about how the idea of a punishment-reward system for the afterlife is childish and overly simplistic. For the second ritual, the supplicant passes through each of the 7 gates. This ritual kind of builds on the idea of giving up all that you were in life so that you may enter the underworld. I did this ritual a day earlier than I was supposed to so that I could do it on the night of the solar eclipse. At each gate, you are instructed to give up a treasure related to the 7 gifts burnt in the previous ritual. For the first, I gave up my light or radiance. At this point in the ritual, I felt I should extinguish the candle on my altar that I used to represent myself. So I did that. Then for consistency and to make the experience more immersive, at each gate I removed something else from my person or from the altar. For gate 2, which was power and strength, I removed my carnelian bracelet. Gate 3, representing abundance and security, I removed my black tourmaline bracelet. Gate 4, wisdom and salvation, I removed my lapis lazuli bracelet. Gate 5, revealed mysteries and truth, I removed my glasses. Gate 6, my song, I turned off my music. For gate 7, name and all that I am, I took off my necklace that represents Inanna, this one here. I stopped to meditate on each one of these gates before moving on to the next and descending further. As I moved through the gates, I was focusing on removing the negative parts of who I am so that I can make room for things that are more beneficial. So at gate 1, I said I need to extinguish who I think I need to be accepted by people and to make room for who I truly am, who I was meant to be. Gate 2, I need to let go of my old, rigid ideas of what strength means to make room for true, more flexible and enduring strength. For gate 3, I said I need to hold less tightly to ideas of abundance and security. I need to make room for new forms of abundance. Gate 4, I need to let go of the idea that I already have all of the wisdom that I need so that I can make room to be more open to new things. For gate 5, I must not cling to revealed truths from the gods, for I need to remember that everything is filtered through my own imperfect mortal brain, and whatever truth I think I might know, there is always more to learn. Gate 6. I must stop singing my silent song if I want my voice to ever reach the heavens. I think I kind of flipped the meaning for this one for myself personally, because I turned the music off to make space for my own voice. I don't need it to be drowned out by the words of someone else. So at this point, I think I realized that I use music a lot in my rituals to kind of cover my own voice. 7. I need to relinquish the identity that was pushed upon me to make room to be who I am. Then after I finished the ritual, I went to take a shower and I threw up. I don't know if that's significant, like if I was expelling all of the things that I gave up at the gates. So these rituals do take a lot of energy. This isn't an undertaking to be started lightly. You should know what you're getting into before you start. For the third part, House of Dust, the supplicant comes face to face with the 7 powers of the underworld. Nedi, Gula, Namtar, Gilgamesh, Ningizida, Nergal, and of course Ereshkigal. I ended up doing this one a day later than I was supposed to. I originally planned to do it the night we got home from our vacation, which would have been the day after the new moon, but the flight was delayed and it was after midnight by the time we actually got home, so I did it Sunday night instead, so I'd be more well rested. Let me reflect upon the gifts that we have given to each of these gods. I had to vow to return past the 7 gates when the gods decree, which I take to mean that I must willingly accept when I die. And I guess that means that I'm not allowed to haunt people after I die. I must return directly to the underworld. After completing the ritual and taking your leave from the underworld, you must also ritually send a replacement, just as Inanna was required to send a replacement after her descent. In our case, we aren't sending an actual person. Even if you do have somebody in mind that you'd like to take your place, for the purpose of this initiation, you will be making a clay stand-in. In Sumerian mythology, the gods created humans from clay mixed with their own blood. So this ritual involves emulating that myth. I made my clay effigy the following day, and then I let it dry, and I did the burial ritual the day after that. I used a natural air-dry clay mixed with some of the ashes from the first descent ritual and 3 drops of blood. I used a sterilized pin to get the blood from my finger. I was barely able to get the 3 drops, but that was all that I needed. And I mixed that with the ashes and the clay and a little bit of holy water, which wasn't part of the ritual, but I thought that was something I should do. Since this was meant to be buried in the ground, I thought it was important to use only natural materials that will return to the earth. The book says to bury it in a cemetery if possible. I buried it in my garden in the area where I bury random mice and other critters, usually that the neighborhood cats bring to me. So it's technically a cemetery of sorts. I buried it with a bit of flour and some dates as offerings. I did the same funeral ritual that I do for the critters too. This just involves burial, putting a stone over the spot as a grave marker and to prevent animals from digging it up, placing flowers and lighting incense as an offering to the dead, and also to prevent animals from digging it up from the smells, pouring water, and saying a prayer to Ereshkigal. It's super simple because it has to be done outside where the neighbors can potentially see, and I started doing it years before I openly practiced paganism. Now the only thing left to do for my initiation is ascent. This one's going to be pretty involved because it includes 7 consecutive days of ritual after the new moon. Then there is a great feast, temple dedication, and proclamation to the city. Then I will be worthy of the priestly red robes of the temple steward. I am also currently working on rebuilding my shrines to honor all of the deities I've met along this journey. I've had a shrine set up for Ereshkigal for a while, but I just added a tablet featuring the names of all of the underworld deities that were involved in the descent rituals. I also made a separate icon for Gula because I find myself praying to her quite often. This is my shrine to Ereshkigal and the other powers of the underworld. I have my statue of Ereshkigal right here that I made out of clay. I made a veil for her out of some of the extra netting I cut off when I was making my veil for the rituals. And down here I have a tablet that has all of the names of the powers of the underworld. Over here are some stones that I brought back from the underwater caves at Ereshkigal in Mexico. I thought those did a good job at representing the underworld. Then I put some of my dried air plants over here because I thought Ereshkigal would like to have some plants at her shrine too. Over here is an icon I made for Gula, the goddess of healing. The bottle is a medicine bottle that I dug up in my garden from the early, I want to say, 1900s. My house is from the late 1800s. Then this container here has my water offering to Ereshkigal. Right here is a skull container. It has some little skulls inside. I've used those to represent some people who have passed on to the underworld. I'll be starting the final leg of this initiatory journey this week, and I'll make a video about it after I finish in September. I'm also planning on making videos for the parts that I did before I started making the videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.